Today's video has kindly been sponsored by Fuel for Fans, which is a website where you can find officially licensed F1 merchandise. What's up guys, and welcome back to round number 10 of my F1 2020 My Team career mode with the Mugen-Honda team, driving as Jenson Button. And well, we are off the back of our first 50% race in Canada. We'll be continuing that today at the French Grand Prix. But it's really brought a new element of strategy into these episodes. So yeah, it was a really good race. If you haven't checked it out, click the I button in the top corner. But for those of you that did watch it, you'll know that we got an 8th place, our best result of the season so far. And hopefully we can replicate that today. Massive thank you, as always, to you guys for your support on the videos. Your comments, likes, the views have just all been brilliant. So yeah. If you could smash a like on this one and try and keep it going, that would be highly appreciated, and of course subscribe if you're new. Now, as you can see in the top right corner, we've actually changed our team name to Mugen-Honda. We've actually managed to put Honda in the name. We've put a little sort of accent on top of the O, which means that it doesn't censor the word. Yeah, it baffled me when Honda was a censored word. But thanks to the suggestions of you guys down in the comments, I've managed to fix it. So yeah, we can finally get the Honda name into the series. Now, getting into proceedings today, starting off with our activities. We've got a couple of weeks to fill between Canada and France, obviously going back to Europe. So we're going to start off with a bit of weight training for Matsushita to try and get his pace up a little bit and hopefully get him higher up the grid this time. Then going on to a durability equipment upgrade, which really increases the department morale for durability, which I think they need because they haven't had particularly high morale all season. And then finishing off with a bit of a sponsor advertisement, which gets us some team acclaim and also rakes in a little bit of cash, which yeah, is always grateful. Advancing through the timeline, you can see we've currently got low cash because our teammates' value has gone up, which I'll show you in a minute. But fortunately, we've got a good bit of weekly income coming in now, thanks to our sponsors. And yeah, we're looking good going into the French Grand Prix. So here you can see the driver performance chart, and Matsushita has actually gone up to a 66 rated driver thanks to the training that we've given him, which is higher now than Nicholas Latifi. So yeah, his value's gone up to 2.5 million, but I think the renewal is after the Austrian Grand Prix, so we'll just have to make sure to keep 2.5 million in the bank, because I do want to keep hold of him. I think it's only really fitting for a Honda career mode, but yeah, that's a bridge that we'll cross when we get to it. Something which we don't need to save up is resource points. We can use them straight away. So yeah, going for a chassis upgrade because we're really falling behind the power curve on that. So that is something which will be with us for the British Grand Prix in round 12. So at the circuit now for the race weekend here at Paul Ricard, you can see that the weather forecast is looking alright. Sunny-ish during qualifying and heavy cloud during the race by the looks of things. But again, dry conditions throughout. So looking at the R&D performance, we've had a couple of upgrades come on to the car for this weekend. Powertrain, aero and durability, which means the morale, at least in the powertrain department, is good, whereas it's normal elsewhere. But that brings us back above AlphaTauri in the vehicle performance chart, which is decent, I guess. But I mean, just look at that midfield. It's so close. Obviously, Racing Point have sort of moved away and now close to Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes. But between McLaren, Renault, Alpha, ourselves and AlphaTauri, it is incredibly tight. And even Haas have now joined that battle. Last time out, we picked our rival, which was Esteban Ocon in the Renault. So I think, again, just like last time, it's going to be a very tight battle, but we take an early lead over him. The practice sessions went pretty well. You can see gaining a hell of a lot of resource points on our side of things, which now gets us up to 915, meaning that we can save up, probably at the start of next episode, for another major upgrade. So getting out onto the track for the first time this weekend and joining us for the end of Q1. We're looking a bit precarious at the moment. You can see we're sat in P16, just on the cusp of elimination. So it's the top 16 that make it through to Q2. We've got our teammate Matsushita just ahead of us in P15. But it's so close in the midfield that just a couple of tenths gain should see us through. But we've run a little bit wide there between turns 5 and 6, which loses us a little bit of time. And then we lose a little bit further time at the turn 8-9 chicane on the Mistral Straight. So yeah, coming towards the end of Sector 2, it was looking very touch and go as to whether we were going to be making it through qualifying. But as we come through the final corner, looking as if we'd lost a bit of time, we actually get a really good propulsion on to the straight. And that gains us a couple of tenths of a second compared to our previous best time. Unfortunately, that sees us through in P14 to Q2. So not looking brilliant. I wasn't really finding a lot of pace on this circuit at this stage of the weekend, but we managed to make it through ahead of our teammate Matsushita, and yeah, a little bit unfortunate for him, but we get into Q2 as the clouds start to form overhead at the end of Q2, meaning the track temperature is really starting to drop off, and I was a little bit concerned at this point. So we were sat in P12, but you know, I felt like I put a decent lap in, but I felt like I could improve quite a bit. So as we come on to the final lap of Q2, I was really hoping that the track temperature hadn't dropped enough so that the times would be not improving, as you tend to get in real life F1. But now we come towards turn 1, and this is actually our best lap of qualifying 2. So we come through the first couple of corners unscathed, and towards turn 3, this quite intricate little complex at the back end of the circuit, trying not to take too much curb, as we again try not to run wide between turn 5 and 6 like we did in Q1. We're currently a tenth and a half up on Sergio Perez's time, which would see us through into Q3 for the first time this season, and we're almost a couple of tenths up on our previous best time as we come now towards the turn 8 and 9 chicane, clipping that apex once again as we tumble now down to P13 in the standings, as Sebastian Vettel gets himself into the top 10. But towards the end of Sector 2 now, we're a tenth and a half-ish up on Sergio Perez's time, and 3 tenths up on our previous best time, as we now come to this incredibly difficult turn 11, having to take a late apex on this one and gaining quite a lot of time compared to our previous best. Again, sort of a blind apex at turn 12 as we come now towards the final section of track. It's looking like a very good lap, definitely the best lap that we've hooked up all weekend, as we come through the penultimate corner at 14, a small inside front lockup at turn 15, and we go now on to the pit straight, once again gaining on our previous best time, over half a second quicker now, and we come across the line. I felt like we really extracted the maximum out of the car, and it was P11, so close to Q3, but still I think we'll take that. Less than a tenth and a half of getting into Q3 for the first time. Ahead of both the Haas cars, ahead of both the Alpha Tauris, and ahead of both of the racing points. So they've made a big step forward in the vehicle performance chart, but, well, hasn't prevailed in qualifying. But unfortunately, Esteban Ocon had an incredible qualifying, getting in to Q3, and that leaves us level in the rivalry.
Here we are once more at the Le Castellet circuit for another round of this year's Formula One World Championship. Renault took their first French Grand Prix win all the way back in the inaugural race in 1906, but it was another 73 years before they could take their second, so they'll be pushing hard to delight the local fans here today. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. An immense lap from Lewis Hamilton yesterday puts him on pole position, and Valtteri Bottas will line up alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Leclerc, Vettel, Max Verstappen and Albon, Ricciardo, Sainz, Norris and Esteban Ocon, Buchan, Perez, Lance Stroll and Gasly, Grosjean, Magnussen, Nobuharu Matsushita and Kimi Raikkonen, Kvyat, Giovinazzi, Russell and Nicholas Latifi. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head to trackside for today's race.
Now that we've got some points on the board, let's continue this form and aim for another top 10 finish.
Thank you, Jeff. I will do just that. So, yeah, on the grid now for a very gloomy looking French Grand Prix, just like the conditions we had last time in Canada, actually. But interestingly, going on to the strategy, a one-stop is the suggested strategy. So starting on mediums and going on to hards, that is something we have the luxury of, seeing as we didn't make it into Q3, so we don't have to start on the time which, on the tyre which we set our fastest time in Q3 on. So, yeah, that gives us an advantage over the top 10. Looking quickly at the drivers' standings, you can see it's still Charles Leclerc on top ahead of Lewis Hamilton. And, yeah, it's a very interesting title battle, as it is in the Constructors. We moved ourselves up into P8 in the standings last time ahead of Haas, but can we hold it here? We've got a decent grid position just behind our rival Esteban Ocon. What can we do as we go to 5 red lights here at Paul Ricard, and away we go. There's a lot of wheel spin from the cars ahead. We're starting on the slower medium tyre, which actually gives us a decent initial launch, but we can't quite get the traction in the latter part. Going now into turn 1 side by side with Esteban Ocon. We're going to leave in the room on the inside using a bit of the runoff, and that has compromised us now on the run down to turn 3, as we've got Sergio Perez in the Racing Point taking a look down the inside. He's got the move done on us, but fortunately the track is wide enough here to go too wide, and we're going to try and go all the way around the outside. A lovely move back in to P11 we go, as it looks as if the two McLarens are struggling for traction. There's a big gap between the two of them and Daniel Ricciardo, who is in 7th place, and now Esteban Ocon fancies a piece of the action, and they go 3 wide now down the Mistral Straight on the run to turn 8. Sainz and Ocon almost come together, and Norris has to take evasive action over the curbs, and it looks like we are going to have a chance of a move now on Lando Norris, but we get a tap from behind from Sergio Perez, which sends them to the side of Lando Norris and has given us a small bit of wing damage on the left-hand end plate. But we make a move on our fellow Brit and go up into a points-paying position, as now Ocon and Sainz go side by side. It looks as if Ocon has got the move done and we get the move done on Lando Norris. And what a first lap this has been for the French Grand Prix. Who said Paul Ricard was a boring circuit? My God, this has been a brilliant start to the French Grand Prix. And as we come now towards the penultimate corner, Norris taking a little look down our inside. But already those two McLarens got a terrible start, which means that Ocon is separated quite a lot from the man in P7, which I think is Alex Albon at the moment, as Daniel Ricciardo is doing a brilliant job in the second Renault. And yeah, we're just trying to keep contact really with the cars ahead, Carlos Sainz, although of course they are on the soft tyre. But take a look at the replay of exactly what happened here at the start. We're on board with Lando Norris, and you can see Sainz and Ocon jostling with each other here. Lando had to go to the inside, which then meant that he was compromised on the exit. You can see there, that's when he got the tap from ourselves. But I don't think it really compromised his speed too much. Our Honda engine just absolutely ripped past the Renault of that McLaren. And finally, the powertrain is looking really, really good. The major upgrade that we've had on the car for this weekend really seems to be working, as Norris really, really struggling on this first lap of the Grand Prix. But we go forward a little bit on to the end of lap 2, and we are now struggling to keep Norris behind us, who seems to have got those soft tyres up to temperature, as now Sergio Perez is actually taking a look at Lando. So on the run into turn 1 at the start of lap 3, Sergio Perez makes his way up into P11, and Lando Norris, who is not on the best tyres for this strategy, is now sat in P12. And we are really struggling now on lap 3 to keep Sergio Perez behind us. So we're sort of exploring all of the track, but he dives it at the inside of turn 14 and is now side by side with us through the final corner. He's going to have a much better run as we get on the curbs a little bit. We do get DRS, so we may be able to make a move on him into turn 1, but at this point I'm thinking, I don't really want to be jostling with Perez, to be honest, because I think he is faster than us. Maybe it's going to be better to just work with him at this stage of the race, because of course we have the advantage, myself and Sergio, of only being able to stop just once in this Grand Prix. Everybody that's in front of us, all of the top 9, are on the soft compound of tyre, and will have to make 2 stops this afternoon, because it's pretty much impossible to take those soft tyres long enough to make a 1-stop work. So yeah, we're just sitting with Perez at the moment, taking his DRS, but not really looking to size up a move here at the end of the straight, as we do a little bit of lifting and coasting at the end of the straight, and just making sure that we're quick enough not to get overtaken by Lando Norris. But now going on to lap 5, that is all that we're on, and already we've got drivers starting to pit, and that was a real common theme throughout the next few laps. So we move up to P3 on the start of lap 7. So those soft tyres only going 5, 6 or 7 laps in Valtteri Bottas's case, but no one has gone longer than 7 laps on those soft tyres. So we now move up into P2 in this Grand Prix, 2.5 seconds behind Sergio Perez, who really seems to have a lot of pace here on race day, as does his teammate Lance Stroll, who is now stuck behind us on lap 10 of the Grand Prix. Of course, he's got the Mercedes engine in the back. You can see there he's about 0.6 of a second behind. But even with the DRS, he is struggling to keep up with our Honda engine. So I'm really, really chuffed at this point that the powertrain upgrades that we brought to this race really seem to be working. And we skip 1 lap later onto lap 11. This is the point where I discovered that I had wing damage. I had no idea before this point that collision with Lando at the start gave us any sort of damage. But yeah, on lap 11 I sort of opened up the tyre graphic just to see how the tyres were doing, and that is when I discovered that we have sort of a darker green end plate, really. So yeah, not brilliant for ourselves, but we carry on to the end of the straight, and the tyre wear was high enough for us to want to come into the pit at the end of lap 11, and Lance Stroll gave us a bit of a scare as we were coming into the pit lane there, because of course he braked a lot later. It's a bit of a strange pit entry, which is why he sort of managed to overtake us, but still we managed to make our way into the pits for the first and hopefully only time this afternoon. Now at this point I realised that I'd left auto wing repair wing damage on, and I wasn't 100% sure whether they'd fix the damage, but I get into the box and you can see they are ready with a new front wing, which will obviously give us a lot more speed in the final stint, but it's taken them so long to get the wing on. It's a 9.3 second pit stop. So yeah, we're definitely going to be behind Stroll and probably a few other drivers when they all emerge from the pit stops. It was a touch and go decision as to whether to do it, really. Obviously, you know, I left it on auto anyway, so I was going to leave it up to the team. But yeah, it's sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If they didn't repair it, I get track position. Now they have, it's good, I can go quicker, and it's relatively easy to overtake around this circuit. But yeah, now on the end of lap 13, we've got a real glut of drivers starting to come in to the pit lane now. One of which is our teammate Nobuharu Matsushita, who's emerged just behind us, and we just about get ahead of Daniel Kvyat. And now you can see Antonio Giovinazzi and Romain Grosjean up ahead. So they've both managed to jump us in the pit phase, none of which we've really had any sort of interaction with during this race. So showing exactly how much time we've lost by repairing that wing damage. But we're looking a hell of a lot faster than the Alfa Romeo car ahead. And we get a massive tank slapper there on the exit of turn 6. We just about managed to recover it, but I think we're now going to be too far back to make a move on Antonio Giovinazzi at the end of the first part of the Mistral Straight. We break into turn 8 once again, just closing up further and further, and if we can get a good propulsion off turn 9, which we do, it looks as if we may be able to make a move on Giovinazzi as we come into turn 10. Now I think we're just too far back for the meantime, but he's almost going side by side with Romain Grosjean. We dive it down the inside of turn 11, and a lovely move on the Italian gets us up into P16 in this race. It was a brave move down the inside, it has to be said, and now that's put us in a good position to try and get ahead of the Haskar of Romain Grosjean. So we're coming now towards the end of the lap. So Giovinazzi tries to go down the inside of us, and he is spun. We'll take a look at a replay of exactly what happened in a minute, but Antonio Giovinazzi has done a half spin trying to go down our inside, and this is what happened from his point of view. So we're coming towards the penultimate corner at turn 14, and he just sort of dives it down the inside where there's not really a gap. Now I don't know whether that's because the AI take a completely different line to myself through that corner, but nonetheless, it seemed like a bit of a clumsy move from Giovinazzi. Let me know, guys, down in the comments. Maybe I was at fault. But now back on board with the action, you can see Valtteri Bottas has already come in for his second stop of the afternoon, but he has emerged behind us, meaning he has to overtake us on track if he wants to finish ahead of us this afternoon. You'd imagine it would be a pretty easy task, as he is now on the medium tyres to the end of the Grand Prix, as we're almost going side by side now through turn 6. Through turn 5 and turn 6. But we are behind Romain Grosjean, wanting to make a move on the Haas driver. But we now activate DRS. Bottas is incredibly close to the back of us, but we're gaining and gaining on Romain Grosjean, who doesn't have DRS. And Valtteri Bottas doesn't get past Grosjean in the first part, and Grosjean cuts across him. And Bottas has to back out, or that would have been some severe wing damage for the Mercedes man, who has only just come out of the pit. But on the run down to turn 10, it looks as if he's got the pace on the Haas car. Bottas on quicker tyres, in a quicker car. It's a pretty easy move. As we now go on to the end of lap 15, there's a couple more cars in the pit lane by the looks of it, as Charles Leclerc has come out ahead of us. Meanwhile, Valtteri Bottas has really got stuck, and it's hindered his progress by the looks of it. And it's going to be interesting to see exactly where he pulls a move on ourselves. Like I say, we have every right to fight him, because this is for track position. So viably, if we could keep Bottas behind for the rest of the race, we would finish ahead of him, because we don't need to make a pit stop, and neither does he. But it's looking like it'll probably be quite an easy move for the Mercedes man, who's of course in a quicker car on a softer compound of tyre, and he's just emerged from the pit. So on the run down to turn 8, it's a pretty straightforward move for P13 in the Grand Prix, but he almost outbrakes himself there, which would have given us an opportunity of getting him back on the exit. We think about trying to make a move on him as we deploy our overtake ERS, but in hindsight, I realise there's no point, because we're never going to get ahead of him for the long haul. But yeah, we're currently sat in P14. There's a few more drivers up ahead that still need to make their final pit stops. So it'll be interesting to see how the order rejuggles. But this is what the order is looking like on lap 18 when everyone's made their pit stops. It's Perez from Stroll in a racing .12. Can you believe it? Both of them on the one-stop strategy, ahead of Sebastian Vettel, who's hunting the two of them down in his Ferrari, just ahead of his teammate and championship leader Charles Leclerc in P4. Then in 5th, it's Pierre Gasly, also on the one-stop strategy, just ahead of Max Verstappen in 6th position. And then in 7th, we have got Kimi Raikkonen, who is at the head of this train, who is just ahead of Valtteri Bottas, who of course we were racing. In fact, no, I think that's Lewis Hamilton actually in P8, just ahead of Daniel Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas, who round out the top 10. But there you can see Lewis Hamilton making a move on Raikkonen, who is almost a sitting duck down that straight. So he's currently holding P8. And these are the final points paying positions. We're sat just behind in P11 at the moment, as Raikkonen and Ricciardo go side by side through turn 10. Surely the Renault gets through, and well, that has been a pretty terrible lap for Kimi Raikkonen, who now lets Valtteri Bottas through, and he is now vulnerable to ourselves for the final points position this afternoon. So this is going to get very interesting. We've got Alex Albon behind us, who we've kept a nice 2-second gap to. But yeah, this battle with Raikkonen and probably Albon, when he catches up to us, is going to be for the final points position this afternoon. So it's not going to be as good a race as Canada by the looks of it for ourselves, but still, we've got an opportunity of points as we come into the final 9 laps of this French Grand Prix. And we really gain on Raikkonen through there. We're looking quite racy at this point of the Grand Prix, but Raikkonen brakes a little bit later than us into turn 3. And to be honest, we're just looking to set up a move with the DRS, because Raikkonen is not going to get any whatsoever as we wipe out one of the bollards in trying to chase Kimi Raikkonen. And we come now onto the DRS straight. It's activated on the run up to turn 8, and we're going to go down the inside of the Alfa Romeo driver. That was a pretty easy move. So Kimi really struggling for pace at this stage of the Grand Prix. And bear in mind, that is the Ferrari engine car, which we were struggling to overtake, even with DRS, in previous Grand Prix this season. So showing, once again, this Honda engine is performing well. Meanwhile, Alex Albon goes around the outside of Kimi Raikkonen for P11. And we're now going to have to turn our attentions to the Red Bull man. And as we come towards the end of lap 19, Albon is not hanging around in this race. He's trying to go for a move in the final couple of corners, and he's going to get brilliant traction around the outside because he's on the softer compound of tyre. But no, even with him having DRS, we're trying to fight back into turn 1, and we have the extra speed, but Albon has the inside line, and that means that we have to yield. But yeah, at this point I'm thinking, just stick with the back of Albon. Just stick with him, and if we can get some DRS on the straights, I'll use Rich Mix, I'll use my overtake button, and hopefully this works Honda engine can make its way past the customer Red Bull car. But yeah, he's gaining so much on us aerodynamically in that first sector that it was always going to be difficult to do. But we are gaining and gaining and gaining. Oh my word, look at this as we're on the DRS, but we're not quite close enough. But we make a dive down the inside nonetheless. There's a little bit of wheel banging into turn 8. But my word, we were over half a second behind Alex Albon, and we managed to gain all of that back on the straight, and we're doing so once again into turn 10, going down the inside of the Thai driver, and we are back up into P10 for the meantime, and don't mind if I do. But we are going into the final sector now, which is definitely our weakest sector on the track, so it'll be interesting to see what Albon does as we run really, really wide there, and that's surely going to give him an opportunity again down the inside of turn 14 as we try and block him off as well as we can. But yeah, it's surely only going to be a matter of time before he gets us back again, as we now travel on to the pit straight for the 20th time this afternoon, about to start lap 21 of this Grand Prix, and he is gaining and gaining with the DRS and moves down the inside on lap 21. Gets a little bit tail happy on the exit, but now we're going to take a look at what's happening just ahead on lap 21. And Sergio Perez has about a 5-second lead in this French Grand Prix. What a turnaround from Saturday for Racing Point, as he looks as if he's going towards his first victory of the season. But no, he's pulling off to the side. There's yellow flags, and Perez has had a car failure from the lead of the Grand Prix. Oh no, he looked as if he was going to take victory. And now it's up to Lance Stroll to carry the flag for Racing Point. Lance Stroll assumes the lead of this French Grand Prix, but he's under heavy pressure from Vettel, Leclerc and Verstappen, and he's on the worst compound of tyre. He's on more heavily worn tyres. This is going to have to be one hell of an effort from Lance Stroll. As you see, we travel past that stricken Racing Point, who deserves some points this afternoon. But we'll take it, because that means that we move into P10, meaning that regardless of whether we can overtake Alex Albon, it looks as if we will score points this afternoon. On lap 21, we don't quite get close enough to Albon, and yeah, we're pushing so hard at this stage of the Grand Prix to try and get within overtaking range of Albon, but this time we don't even get DRS on lap 22 of the Grand Prix. Yeah, at this point it's looking like we're really going to struggle to get P9, so we're going to have to settle for the final points position, although Pierre Gasly is 5 seconds up the road. Meanwhile, we join the action for the lead of the Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel trying to go past Lance Stroll here with just a few laps left in the race, and Stroll locks up, which gives Vettel a preferable line and better traction, and Stroll falls down into P2 in what's been a valiant effort. But and now he's passed for P3, passed and down into P3 as Charles Leclerc makes it a Ferrari 1-2, and he's now got Max Verstappen right on his tail. And to be fair, for a few laps, Max Verstappen was looking like he was really struggling with the Honda engine to overtake Lance Stroll. A couple of failed opportunities at turn 8, and you're starting to think, well, Lance Stroll could make it on to the podium this afternoon. But now you can see, once again, Verstappen closing in for the 3rd time in a row, and this time he goes to the outside and goes clean round the Canadian driver, and the Racing Point dream has been shattered. with Lance Stroll not even making it onto the podium and Sergio Perez not scoring any points. But now we go towards the line. Charles Leclerc made a move on his teammate in the closing stages of this race to take victory ahead of Sebastian Vettel, and we come round quite a way behind Albon in the end, who managed to overtake Gasly. And for P10, still a points finish in this Grand Prix, one that we didn't really have the pace in, but good strategy brought us home yet another point. 3 days in a row. 3 days in a row? Well, I guess so. 3 days in a row, 3 races in a row. But yeah, it was that man who was on top this afternoon. Charles Leclerc takes another victory for Ferrari. I mean, it could have been one for Racing Point. Mercedes didn't look as if they were anywhere this weekend. You know, Racing Point, the pink Mercedes, was closer to victory. And a good couple of points for AlphaTauri, the first points of the season for Pierre Gasly.
Here come our winners now. A thrilling race and a tremendous effort by Ferrari. Their history is well known, so it's no surprise to fans the world over to see them come out on top once again.
So it's another race and another Ferrari 1-2. God, this career mode couldn't be any more different to the real life season, with Lewis Hamilton picking up P3 and still keeping his championship hopes alive. You know, we've still got over half the season remaining, but there is the full race classification. Leclerc taking the fastest lap on the last lap of the race as well, which means that he has the full 26 points ahead of Vettel and Hamilton, with Verstappen and Bottas even getting past Lance Stroll. I do feel sorry for him, as only 8 points go to Racing Point. Ourselves, we managed to just get the 1 point ahead of Esteban Ocon, importantly, who is of course our rival. And fair play to Pierre Gasly getting AlphaTauri's first points of the season, and Matsushita as well, struggling to finish ahead of the second AlphaTauri of Daniel Kvyat. Raikkonen really falling down the order towards the end as well, which is disappointing for him. But there we can see the driver standings. We still managed to just poke our head in P14 down at the bottom there, but it's Leclerc 14 points now ahead of Hamilton, with Vettel also within 1 race victory of the lead of the championship. In terms of the constructors, AlphaTauri have moved ahead of Haas for the first time this season with their first points, and they're now only 4 points behind ourselves. So yeah, we're really having to be careful in that sense, and hopefully we can finish P8 or higher at the end of the season. And there you can see our rivalry breakdown to finish this episode. It's 9-all now, looking very, very close with 5 races remaining. But yeah, thank you once again, guys, for tuning in to this race. Hopefully you did enjoy it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like. And if you've made it this way in the video, drop me a comment down below as well and let me know whether you've enjoyed this Grand Prix. You can see there getting the money from our sponsors, which is always good. And as I said at the start of the video, massive thank you to Fuel for Fans for sponsoring this one. You can check out their links down in the description and get a nice little discount with my code as well. So yeah, I'll catch you guys for tomorrow's race. Do take care. Bye bye.